In my last video, I dove into Need for Speed Carbon for the first time. I loved checking the game out as a new player. I thought it was a better game than most people give it credit for, but it wasn't without its faults. If you'd like to check out my full analysis, I've linked the video on the screen and in the description, as well as the entire Need for Speed series playlist down below. Need for Speed Carbon was the latest game in my journey to play every Need for Speed title, and with Carbon now out of the way, that leads us to Need for Speed ProStreet. Need for Speed ProStreet is kind of an odd entry in the series. It completely flips the established formula of open world street racing on its head, and instead pivots to linear, professional circuit racing. This is much more up my alley, as I'm a huge fan of series like Dirt, Grid, and Gran Turismo. But considering the series' prior success as a street racer, I knew that ProStreet would be divisive among the fanbase. So with this video, I hope that I can give the game a proper first look in 2025, and see once and for all if this is another easy win for the series, or if it's a disappointing experiment and a blemish on the Need for Speed name. So let's stop yapping and get right into it. My name is Mercy, and I played Need for Speed ProStreet for the first time. Enjoy. Need for Speed ProStreet released on November 14th, 2007 for PS2, PS3, Xbox 360, Wii, DS, and PC. It was later released on February 18th, 2008 for the PSP. Today we're going to be primarily focused on the PC version of the game. The PSP and DS versions are, once again, essentially stripped down versions of the console edition. Big surprise. And so I'll be saving them for a future Need for Speed handheld games video. Get subscribed so you don't miss that. With community fixes and mods, the PC is the best way to play this game today, in my opinion. I just had to install some fixes for my Xbox controller, and I was off to the races. I did, however, run into a ton of stuttering and freezing issues, which were resolved when I turned VSync on, but your mileage there may vary. I just want it to be known that I found this to be the buggiest PC release of the games I've played so far. I'm not holding that against the game. It is old, it is delisted, it is what it is. Instead, let's dive into the story and setting for the game. ProStreet takes place during, you guessed it, the ProStreet Festival, where you play as Ryan Cooper, a former street racer trying to go pro. We don't know much about him outside of what I just told you. He doesn't talk, and he never takes his helmet off. I have read a fan theory online that Ryan Cooper is the same guy as the character from Most Wanted and Carbon, and that he assumed the identity to keep a low profile. I don't know if I believe that, but it would explain why he never shows his face. Something to think about. Let me know in the comments what you think. Getting back to the festival, as you progress through the race days against various race crews, you'll earn an opportunity to race against one of the 5 kings, or the leaders of each crew. The first 4 each represent a different discipline in ProStreet's event types, and the final king, Ryu Watanabe, being a collection of all of them. The kings themselves, I don't find them to be all that interesting as villains. Outside of Ryu, they don't have personality outside of their distinct cars, and maybe their intro sequence that plays when you first meet them. They just kind of exist in the grand scheme of things. You won't be finding any Razor or Darius-like characters from the villains. It's a bit of a buzzkill after 2 back-to-back winners, but ProStreet more than makes up for this lack of personality with its PA announcer. Bar none, this is the best PA guy I've heard in a video game ever, and that's not an exaggeration. This announcer does a fantastic job of selling the fact that we're actually at a festival. Going to a racetrack is supposed to be a fun experience, and he does a phenomenal job of staying lighthearted, being high energy, and selling the excitement of racing. He'll call over the PA system to praise rising drivers, to point out struggling drivers, or just to mention random things happening on the festival grounds. There was one time where I stepped away for a minute, and when I came back, he was talking about how somebody in the parking lot had left their lights on. If you've ever been to a racetrack, you know how common this is. It helps sell that immersion, and the announcer's lines even change based on whatever event is about to start, or, the results of events. He'll call out whenever Ryan takes the lead, or he'll comment when someone crashes out or is losing a bunch of positions. He'll also hype up certain events, like for example, in a drag event, I was in a Dodge Charger and my opponent was in a Chevelle, and he goes, "It's Dodge versus Chevy in this American Muscle Showdown." There was another instance where I wrecked a Porsche, and he commented how expensive that wreck was and how there were Porsche parts all over the track. Might sound like I'm just glazing this dude, but trust me, the glazing is justified. If you ever decide to revisit the game, or if you're playing this for the first time, I think you'll be shocked at how much this guy adds to the overall experience. Whenever I play a modern festival racer, looking at you Motorfest, I tend to mute the NPCs because I just can't be bothered with how robotic and fake everyone sounds. By comparison, I wanted this guy to have more lines, and honestly, I bet I even missed a few of them on my playthrough, so I'm stoked to see what else he has to say on future playthroughs. Amazing addition, great job, one of the best parts of ProStreet. On top of the announcer, I just love how you have to manage your resources at the track. ProStreet emphasizes clean racing, and so if you bust up your car too much, you'll have to spend your own money to fix it up. Or you can use a marker, but these aren't always available to you. Personally, I tended to save my markers for my more expensive cars, and then I used my own money on the cheaper cars. So the game really punishes you if you're a dirty driver or if you make a lot of mistakes. The game encourages you to get better, make clean passes, learn how to set up moves on the track, maximize the track width, all of the things that make you a better driver, which again, I'm all about. I love that. On top of just managing your finances, each event type also requires a very specific type of car, one for each different category of event. You can't just bring your drag car to the track and then use it in a circuit race with a different tune. Some people might see this as a detriment, maybe they're attached to one specific car. I get it, I really do. But for me, I think this system is awesome. It forces you to really think ahead, to think about how to tune and upgrade your car before you come to the track, to think of where to spend your money. Say I'm dominating circuit races, but I'm struggling in the drag racing. Should I really be putting more cash into my circuit car? And it makes you think of how to upgrade that car too. Like if I'm building a drag car, does it really matter how great my brakes are? Is my top speed really all that important? Or maybe I can prioritize acceleration or trying to improve rear grip. These are the kinds of things that run through your head once you get the hang of the game and how it flows. I don't want to say that this is the thinking man's Need for Speed, but it sure does feel that way. Customization isn't built around gaudy visual mods, but it's built around squeezing performance out of your car until you eventually reach its limit and either stick with it or you top it out and decide that it's time to swap it for something else. Swapping cars is something I did a lot of in ProStreet. I think I used more cars in this game than I have in all of the previous games put together. It encourages you to experiment and to try new things, and you'll want to over the course of this game's runtime. In total, there are 55 different race days, each with as little as 3 events, all the way up to 7 events. Not all events are required to beat, and to complete the race day, you don't even need to finish first in all of them. You just have to have enough points to beat the day, and for completionists, you have to earn enough points to dominate the day. Each race day has a variety of events to compete in, but they tend to have a theme, usually built around whichever crew you're competing against that day. That's not to say that you won't be doing any drag events during a grip race day, but there will be less of them. The focus will be primarily on the grip racing. Like I said, there are 5 crews in total, with 4 of them representing a different discipline. Grip runners specialize in grip events, Aftermix in drag events, Toge Union in drift events, and Box Cut specializes in speed events. Lastly, the final crew, Apex Glide, doesn't specialize in any specific event type, but instead exclusively drives Japanese cars and expect you to compete in a variety of different events. You won't really see these guys until the end of the game, so you'll have plenty of time to master each discipline before you get there. Each crew is led by a different leader or king, and you'll have to defeat each of these kings 1v1 to progress and beat the game. I like the progression in ProStreet. It never felt like a real slog, or didn't really feel like there was filler in the game. Granted, I didn't beat every single race day, maybe my opinion would change if I did, but I did beat all 5 kings and I saw the credits roll. I was constantly buying new cars or tuning my existing ones, just experimenting to see what worked with what event types. Events are pretty standard stuff, but there are different variations within those event types. For example, within drag racing, there are quarter-mile and half-mile drag races, as well as wheelie competitions, which are super fun once you figure them out. It's not just pure drag racing. Same goes for circuit races. There are, of course, just regular events with laps, but then there are also ones where you're driving cars that they provide to you, and then if you beat that event day, you get that car. And there's also circuit events with multi-class racing. Multi-class racing in a Need for Speed title was not on my bingo card, but these events are sick. I always liked being a part of the slower class and kind of seeing how fast I was against the faster class. I felt like I could outclass them comfortably for most of the time in the corners. It's not that, like, you don't have to beat the faster class, you just have to beat your own class. But I was faster than them in the corners, but they would blow right by me on the straightaways. But if I had to pick one single event type I enjoyed the most, it has to go to the speed challenges. The speed challenges are quite literally one of the best things I've experienced in a video game. The sense of speed during these events is just balls to the wall, cranked to 11 insanity, faster than anything else in the game. Add the imperfections of the roads, kind of knocking your car around with the overall twitchiness of the handling model, and you can't forget the fact that one minor mistake can end your entire event and force a restart. Oh yeah, and did I mention there are 7 other cars on the track with you? These types of events could very easily slot right into a Burnout game as is. That's just kind of the level of destruction and speed we're dealing with here. However, this is where I feel like we need to talk about the elephant in the room, the one thing I've kinda not wanted to talk about, and that is the handling model. Even in the speed challenges, I didn't exactly love the way these cars felt. The handling in ProStreet is weird, to say the least. It emphasizes the weight of the cars, but I just think it's too much for the most part. It's too exaggerated. Cars feel heavy, stiff, and clunky. This is pretty much the polar opposite of the prior games in the series, which are much more responsive and snappy. It's so much that I honestly thought my controller was malfunctioning at first. I thought there was some kind of Bluetooth lag going on, but nope. It's still the same after I plugged it in. There is definitely some kind of built-in input lag, which is such a weird way of simulating weight and steering, to the point where I don't know of any other game off the top of my head that does this. You can certainly overcome this issue yourself. I know I did. I beat the game with this issue. Or you can install a mod to get rid of this if that's what you choose to do, which I probably will do on a repeat playthrough, but I just like to keep these as vanilla as possible for the videos. This weirdness is a big reason why I struggled so much with the last event type, drifting. I'm starting to think I need a teacher, because man, these caused me an insane amount of stress. I don't know if my tunes were bad, or if I'm fundamentally missing something, or if it really is the input lag, or maybe a combination of things. I have no idea. I just could not keep the cars in this game off the wall. And if I did, I found myself not winning many events. There were times where I would feel very confident in my run. I was sliding the whole time, felt like I had a good angle, but then I went to look up and see that I barely put any points on the board. I was lucky to even get top 3. If anyone knows a game with a great drifting tutorial, or maybe someone wants to hop in Discord one day to teach me, let's go. I'm ready to learn. But until then, man, I struggled on this. But let's think of the positives. Since I was damaging my car so much during drifting, I'm very happy to say that they've upped the damage model in ProStreet, which is a huge concern of mine in the previous games. I was seeing so many different pieces of my car flying off, bumpers hanging off, busted glass, the works. It's not the most detailed damage model ever, but considering these cars are all licensed and considering what we had prior to this, I think it is very impressive, and it's a big step up over the previous games in the series. The wrecks are gnarly in ProStreet, especially in the speed challenges. I think I wrecked out more during these events than in any of the other events combined. It was total chaos during these. Even in the late game where I felt like I had it all figured out, I didn't. The soundtrack really helped raise the intensity during my playthrough too. Songs like Blackjack by Airborne, Power Player by Clutch, shout out to all my Maryland bros by the way, and my personal favorite, Almost Easy by Avenged Sevenfold. I knew every time this song came on, I was going to have an insane race, good way or bad way. One way or another, I was going to have a crazy race. This game's soundtrack is a mix of both electronic and rock, with some of the artists here blending the two together. It results in a very cohesive sound, and some of these songs I'll never be able to hear on their own without thinking of ProStreet. As always, if you're interested in listening to the soundtrack on its own, I've went ahead and linked a Spotify playlist down below. Let's talk about the cars, because there are a lot of them. In total, there are 55 different cars to choose from, across America, Europe, and Asia. The one thing I told myself during my playthrough was that I wanted to get outside of my box. I tend to use the same cars in every game, and while I did use many of them again this time around, they weren't always my favorites. The Ford GT, for example, which has become a staple in this series, was downright terrible for speed challenges. I just could not keep this thing straight. It was insanely twitchy, and I found myself very quickly getting frustrated with it and trading it in for an all-wheel drive car, the Porsche 911 Turbo. Awesome car, by the way. The difference in grip between these two cars cannot be understated. It was by far my favorite car for the speed challenges. Once I got it, I was good to go. But beyond just the Porsche, I had plenty of cars in this game that became my favorites. I love the Chevy Corvette C6Z06 for circuit events, especially ones with less technical corners, ones with long straightaways and more sweeping corners. It struggled with grip for me early on when I had to get back up to speed off of tight corners, so it was fun having to manage the throttle before hammering it down. I knew that if I was kind of just fast enough through those corners, maybe not the fastest, but quick enough, I would still be able to pass and smoke my opponents on the straightaways, and I did for most of the game. Before the Corvette, I did have a 350Z for a short period. That was my early game circuit car that I really enjoyed using. Not much top speed, but it handled those shorter technical courses well. I also had a Chevelle that I used for a short period that really challenged me. It's not exactly a great handling car or really a great car in general at all for circuit racing. I just enjoyed the challenge of maximizing the track, managing throttle, brake, the works. Later on in the game, I did buy a Nissan Skyline R34 GTR, which again is kind of becoming a recurring car in this series, and I dominated most of the circuit events I entered that one in, but I don't know, I still went back to the Corvette on occasion. But the single most OP car I found in this game from the get-go was the 1969 Dodge Charger. It was my first purchased drag car, and I ran it until the end of the game. I tried to make this look as close to a General Lee as possible. Let me know in the comments how I did, but I don't think I lost a single race in this car. No, really. I mean, I was smoking everybody that was thrown at me. I did start to struggle during the wheelie competitions I mentioned earlier, but as soon as I figured out how to really do that properly, it was smooth sailing and I was crushing my opponents. I even bought other drag cars like the Plymouth Barracuda just to try to mix it up, but every time I would try another car, I would just see its faults and be like, oh, the Charger's so much better in this way and this way and this way, and I just ended up selling it and going back to the Charger. What an absolute beast of a car. When it came to drifting, I enjoyed my time with the 240SX and eventually worked my way up to the RX-7 because, of course I did, but I'd argue I enjoyed them as much as I possibly could. I did try some unconventional cars because at one point I was trying to drift an old Pontiac GTO because I remembered how good muscle cars are in carbon for drifting, but it just didn't translate to ProStreet. Go figure. Overall though, a great selection of different cars and something this series has always had during the black box era. Let's take a moment to dive into the customization a bit more. I've just kind of been vaguely talking about it up until now. So each car has 3 base stats, those being power, handling, and aero. Pretty simple stuff. But each car's engine, drivetrain, turbos, superchargers, suspension brakes, tires, nitrous can all either be installed or upgraded. Again, pretty standard stuff, but where this game takes a detour for me is the return of auto sculpt. If you've seen my carbon video, you know how much I loved this feature, and to see it back in ProStreet is a blessing. But unlike in Carbon, where it served no purpose beyond visual customization, ProStreet's auto sculpt can affect things like downforce or drag, with a real-time wind tunnel showing you exactly where the air is going as you sculpt and mold the car. This is such a cool feature, man, and the natural evolution of the feature in a more serious track racer like this. Though I will say the one drawback to this system is that you might not be able to fully create the look you want because now you're trying to lessen drag or increase downforce as opposed to creating some gaudy, ugly abomination like we did in Carbon. And while it's not a fix for this issue, there is a visual section here that allows you to create semi-abominations to your heart's content. In here, you can change paint colors, add vinyls and wraps, tint the windows, change the interior, that sort of thing. I don't tend to mess around with these paint booths too much in games, so I did appreciate seeing these full-body vinyls where I could just select something, change the color, and apply it. That's the sort of customization I like, then let me maybe change out the wheels and tint the windows, boom, I'm done. I can jump back into the game. There's also an option to tune your car, and this is where we really get into the nitty-gritty of car customization. This is where the game really takes a quantum leap over its predecessors. In here you can tweak specific suspension parts like the front and rear roll bar stiffness, your ride height, shock compression and rebound rates, brake bias, gear ratios, the works. I spent way too much time in here trying to squeeze that last tenth or two out of a car while I was saving cash to buy that next major upgrade. I would argue you can probably ignore the tuning screen if you really wanted to. I think you could probably beat the game without doing this, but I strongly advise against that, especially since you'll be able to save 3 different blueprints to a specific car and then use that car for different types of tracks if you choose to. I'm not saying you can take that car to multiple types of events, but there's enough track variety here where you might want to keep multiple blueprints. I tend to not talk about the tracks too much in these videos. Kind of funny when you think about it. They're racing games, you think I would talk about them more, but I felt the need to in this one. Need for Speed Pro Street has a combination of both real life and fictional tracks, and so you've probably seen some of these in other games. I'm very familiar with Sonoma and Willow Springs, so I recognized these instantly. There's also Altopolis, Portland International Speedway, Mondello Park, and Texas World Speedway, which is an oval track NASCAR used to run on back in the day. But the game has more courses and layouts that aren't licensed, but are very clearly based on real tracks. For example, there is a Nevada track that looks suspiciously similar to Watkins Glen, and I'm sure there's more in the game that I just didn't recognize. There are a few fictional tracks as well, but they all feel great to drive on, in the sense that if you told me they were real, I would believe you. The only tracks I didn't care for were the oval layouts. I love oval racing, I'm a huge NASCAR guy, but I'll be the first to admit that not many games get it right, and this is another one to add to that list. But at the end of the day, there are only a handful of these during your playthrough, so whatever. It's fine. With all things considered, Need for Speed Pro Street was ahead of its time. It gave us a groundbreaking damage model, a phenomenal PA announcer, a great selection of cars, and a festival atmosphere that still feels alive and relevant today. The shift from open world to closed circuit isn't a detriment. It works in its favor. Black Box would abandon this formula in their next game, Need for Speed Undercover, and that's a damn shame. These guys took a huge risk in changing their established, successful formula, and I respect the hell out of that. It might not have made game reviewers or shareholders at the time very happy, but you guys just weren't ready for it yet. In 2025, this game gave me so much joy, and it was a blast to run through from start to finish. If you have mixed opinions on Pro Street, whether you played it back then or not, I am telling you, give it another chance. I think you'll be surprised by how well this game has aged and how much fun there is in this almost 20-year-old game. But enough about me though, it's time to turn it over to you guys. What do you guys think? Did you love the shift to closed circuit racing, or do you wish Pro Street was more like the previous games in the series? I'm curious to read your thoughts. I try to read every comment posted. Thank you all so much for watching. This last month has been very stressful, so I appreciate everybody. Huge shout out to my highest tier patrons CD-ROM Fossil and Arcade Racing Central, as well as all of my supporters over on Patreon. You guys are amazing. My name is Mercy, and as always, have a good one.